and welcome back to the Empower Journal, a space to create the life you want to live. This is a podcast where we explore real stories of resilience, purpose, impact that people create. So, in today's episode, it holds both weight and hope. This isn't just a story about pretending everything is okay. It is about honesty, about sitting with discomfort, learning from it, and slowly turning pain into power, I would say. And most importantly, in our own time and in our own way. And to talk about today's episode, this is going to be really powerful because we spoke about turning pain into strength, navigating uncertainty, and what it truly means to rebuild from within. Here is Kalyani Rohit with me today, a former child actor, I would say. She's the powerhouse back in those days. So, who grew up in the spotlight and faced the unspoken realities of the film world. Later emerged as a mental health advocacy person, using her voice to spotlight what truly matters. From surviving industries, exploitation, and personal loss, she had also launched A Daughter's Promise, and her movement for mental health awareness is outstanding. Kalyani's journey reminds us that healing isn't it about moving on always. It's about moving through together. Can't wait to hear you on this, Kalyani. Thank you so much for being here and for trusting this space with your story.
Thank you so much, Deviki. That was such an amazing intro. I've never heard an intro like that, which is so clear and crisp, and it actually says what I do. I mean, thank you so much for that. I'm really honestly, I'm super excited for today. Because you speak so much about empowerment and so much about strength, and you have such amazing topics that you talk every time, and I'm really excited today.
Lovely. That means a lot. And so let's start right at the beginning. Okay. Kalyani, you grew up in front of the camera. I remember seeing you with all those cute performances. So what was it like to carry that kind of attention so young?
Honestly, Devaki, I think the credit goes to my mom, because when I first started, I mean, my mom and me were classical dancers. So we were dancing on a show, and a director saw us, and then he went up to my mom and said, "This girl is very bubbly, and she's like very, in Tamil they say turu turu." So we're hosting this show, and we want her to be the host. So then my mom said, "Listen, she doesn't know Tamil that well." Because because we're Malayalis, my dad was in the Coast Guard, so we kept moving around. So it's Hindi that comes naturally to me.
Okay.
So then he's like, no, let us start with English. And she's so young, she will pick up some Tamil words, and it was a quiz show.
Okay.
So and they said they promised us they'll do it on weekends and all of that. And my mom said yes. And then weekends I started doing this quiz show for Jaya TV. After which I got a model coordinator, and then I started doing ads with her, Biju auntie, and she gave me an audition for Alithandavanam with Prabhudeva sir.
Okay,
so I went for the audition, and then the rest is history, right?
Great. So, I mean, it sounds like a very exciting journey though, but did you feel like there was a space for you to be a child?
See, I'm a 90s kid, right? So we don't really know space and what we have to do and stuff like that. Like whatever mother and your dad says, that goes, right? But I used to enjoy being on sets a lot. Like every time I have to go to school, stomach pain, head pain, vomiting is coming, I would somehow try to escape it. And I used to love being on sets, and that was like completely me. Like I love standing in front of camera. I love acting. I love the whole, maybe because I don't know whether I was matured for my age, or generally, like I get to talk to people who are much older to me, and they would treat you the same. I mean, they would be playing with you and stuff like that, but the conversation when they're having, we're all there in the conversation as, okay, this scene, we're going to do this, and you're going to do this, and everybody is equal at that particular point of time. So I just enjoyed being on camera. So I never really missed going to school or having friends or any of that.
Lovely. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit, probably a little on a serious note. So as you grow older in the industry, the energy around you would have shifted, and you have spoken about facing most of it, like the casting coach, the harassment, or etc. I would want to know, when did you realize first something was deeply wrong?
See, as a kid, you don't even get a script, right? You just say they're on this movie, I, mama and me go, we shoot, we come back. But when you start becoming a leading lady, first of all, the biggest mistake I did is I became a leading lady in the age of 14.
Okay.
Because the story was this movie called Raja Ki Aayegi Barat in Hindi. They wanted to do that kind of movie in Tamil. In that movie, this young girl gets married to a family, and the boy has four other brothers or four other people, and how everybody rapes her, and then she goes to the court and she fights.
Okay.
So it was a very strong subject to do on, and somehow we really loved the concept, and we were like, yeah. And at that time, see, when you're a child artist, you don't care which production it is, who's the hero, nothing. We don't care about any of that. But I realized that as a adult, as a leading lady, you have to know who's the person who's acting opposite you. You have to know which production company it is. Otherwise, you can get into deep shit, right? So then we did that movie. But during that movie, everybody was so good, so sweet, and I had no problem doing that movie. But after the movie released, I realized this technology things also are there, right? My pictures started coming off with morph thing, right? Like, so I was actually wearing a dress below my knee. And most of the photographs showed me crossing my leg and my dress literally to my underwear types. So they had morphed all my dress out, and then obviously we fought with the production company, but it was too late. I finished the movie and the agreement was over, and they said, no, this only works in the industry. Only if we show a little glamour, it'll come. So all this we didn't know. So then I was like, okay, my first movie, yeah. So we got cheated in the aspect of how glamour they had actually, even shooting, right? They would keep the camera on top, and you don't have that much sense also, because I was just 14, 15. Even my mom would be sitting somewhere, but she wouldn't even know what shot is going on. So song sequence, it'll be like the camera will be on top and they're shooting this, and when the movie comes out, it looks way glamorous than you actually thought. And that was my first lesson of the movie. And then second movie, again, the same mistake I did. Even though they didn't do anything to me, the movie was a crap. Then the third movie, I got a call from a good production company. And then we were like, okay, great. I mean, it's a good production company. And then the manager spoke and everything is like, and then they said, this is like a very well-known hero was the lead, very well-known and everything. And then he was telling my mom, but you have to do adjustments. So my mom was like, adjustments means what? Dates? That's no problem. We can adjust the dates and all. The dates is not an issue. They're like, no, not dates. Some adjustments has to be made. My mom didn't understand anything. She's like, can you be more specific? No, she might have to sleep with the production company, and And then my mom started telling him all the bad Malayalam words that she knows, because that was her fluency, right? She just gave it back to him. She cut the phone and she started crying. And then I came into the room. I was like, what kind of an industry is this? People who are nice, and at the end of the day, they show you badly. The big production movies come and they want you to sleep, but I don't get it. What kind of an industry is this? And I did have a couple of other calls, which was like this. Like the word they use is adjustments. Adjust panano. And then and that's how I said, okay, no more movies. I cannot do this. Like, this is not what I signed up for. And then I was supposed to go to so every time something happens in our house, we sit and we discuss what to do. So as I was discussing, okay, what we can do, but I don't want to leave the industry, so maybe I'll go do film. I'll go learn direction or writing or something like that. Meanwhile, I got a call from a Malayalam industry where I was supposed to be. It's not a lead character in Malayalam. It's one good thing, no? Whichever character you play, it's still important. So I was this heroine's sister, but who helps to change Mammootty. He's this rowdy and a bad guy, but one act of mine kind of changes him. So
Okay.
then I went to Kerala for audition, and then they were all damn sweet. And Mammootty sir, so he's a deciding man. He just
Hmm.
looked at me and said, "Yeah, she's doing this. Done."
Hmm.
And then I just started shooting, and it was the most fun shoot ever, right?
Hmm.
Like I don't know, yeah, Malayalam movies they do talk. There's a lot happening there. Yes, there might be a lot happening there. I don't know because it was Mammootty sir's set, or I don't know what. But we did have one incident while the movie was almost over. I had only 1 day shoot left. The previous night, we were in our hotel room, my mom and me.
Hmm.
I think around 2 o'clock or something, we heard dot 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 on our door, and my mom was like, "Don't talk and thing, just shh, okay." And then dot on the door, and then after some time, I think after 5 6 times, then that knock stopped. And then we were all freaked out and all. We didn't even want to tell anybody because we didn't know what was happening, so we just left it. Yeah, but
Right.
then otherwise the movie completed, and then I came back and it was okay. So yeah, these
Hmm.
are the and then due to so many reasons, I did a Telugu movie also, which again went to. It was a beautiful Telugu movie, but the director on the day of release died
Hmm.
by suicide. The day, and the thing was that movie was meant to be like doing well because that was the era where newcomers movies were doing very well. Like nice romantic movies, newcomer movies were doing very well. This 2008, 9, at a
Right.
time like that. It's supposed to be doing really well. And everything was going fine and everything. I was excited about the release and all of that. And then the day of the release, the manager calls. So manager calls, I thought, okay, he's going to tell me, okay, first show, superb and all that. He
Hmm.
calls me and says like, director died. I'm like, what? Director died? Just watch news. And then I saw the news and I got to know that he died by suicide, and that broke my heart because this is a director who just finished shooting with Nagarjuna sir, and his next movie also was supposed to be with Nagarjuna sir. In between, he wanted to do this newcomer movie. So all this put together, I was like, I'm done. This is not for me. And then when I decided to completely stop, within few months I got a call from Vijay TV. So that's the leap I took to television.
Right. So yeah, but it's not easy to revisit, right? You've been fearless in exposing the Bollywood's dark side as well at some point of time. So this is the decision that led you to walk out of the movie industry. So, why are we not seeing on television? Like, when did you decide? Did you decide to quit the television industry after a point?
First, initially, I started hosting shows, and
Hmm.
then I started doing serials. Same people, like the same management said, why get. Initially, I was not very ready for serials, but then I started doing. And I did about 3 to 4 serials as a leading lady. I had a great time. It was all good.
Hmm.
But my mom died of suicide, 2014, and I was still continuing that serial called Anda Laraga. It was still going on. But then in the middle, it just didn't make any sense for me because my biggest cheerleader was not there anymore. She used to pack my lunch, get saris, and when I come back home, she said, "This scene I didn't like at all, or this scene was good, or whatever." So it didn't make sense for me to do that anymore. I'm very sure I pissed off a lot of people in Vijay TV because of my decision. Because mid everything, I just said, "Sir, I'm done. I don't think I can do this." And they were like, they couldn't even convince me because from the place I was coming. So I'm very sure they're all very disappointed with me. Maybe why they're not calling me back after so many years. Yeah, I think I pissed them off by just randomly middle of the shoot saying, "Sir, I can't do this. I'm done." And they had to accept because of the situation, and then I walked out. I walked out in 2015 end, I guess, and then I haven't gone back.
That's actually incredibly brave. I mean, I could see that silence feels safer than being open, and your story shows how truth can become a liberation. Right. So
Yeah,
when you finally decided to leave, like, yeah, you are going through a personal trauma, but later on, at any point of time, did you realize, or did you miss, or what did those days look like for you? Do you revisit because you seem to love what you were doing? So
I
how?
loved what I was doing. But
Mm,
the thing is, maybe I could have walked out in a better way. Maybe I should have had a conversation properly with the heads and
mm,
saying that, okay, can you give me a break? Can I come back after a break? Or, at that time your brain is really not working, right? Like when my mom passed away, that one part of Kalyani also died. So it was all like fuzzy, and I didn't know what I was doing also. And I didn't have people around me to tell me what to do also. Like, like even in my house in Chennai, I sold it like this. Now the same house in Chennai is really expensive. I lived in Besanagar. It's really expensive.
Okay.
At that time, if I had one person saying that, listen, slow down, we'll probably give it for rent and then we'll see, later. I didn't have those people around me to give me that thing. So, yeah, maybe I could have been a little better, because now, even if I want to get back to work, those people are not going to pick up my call for sure. Because the way I walked out, they're not going to pick up my call. And people say, yeah, it's so easy for you to get back to acting. What is there? It's so easy. It's like, no, it's not easy. I lived in a different era and I did piss off some people. And it's different now, right? The industry is completely changed now. And it's also become like, oh, you're less expensive. Okay, I'll take you. Oh, you're more expensive. So the experience doesn't really count anymore, especially in television. That's why if you see television now, most of the serials, it's pretty much new girls who are coming in. The experienced ones are like not really getting much. So I was like, yeah, but I need to get and do work and do like some acting. It took me a while, because what happened was, acting is something where you are somebody else. You're not Kalyani. You're the character. So at that particular point of time, I didn't want to be anybody else. I wanted to be Kalyani. I wanted to accept myself, understand my mom is not there anymore. I just wanted to understand me, because for the longest time I was only playing characters. So now it's been 9 years since I left the industry, and I am now comfortable with myself and I can get back to work. But the problem is, getting work is now a little difficult because I took that decision of coming out.
Right.
But one thing I'm really proud of is I walked out. It was never that, okay, her fame is gone and then she faded away. So that one thing I'm very proud of. Like, okay, nobody told me to quit. I quit on my own.
That's what sounded really brave for me, because you chose to say no, and especially at the lowest point. So it didn't come from the industry, but from your personal loss. So,
yeah.
Would you like to share that part of your journey? I mean, please do, only if you're comfortable and what you feel comfortable sharing.
Of course, I've always shared that. And so initially, when my mom passed away, the closest circle didn't know how she died. They very, very close circle only knew how she died, but not really everybody. At that time, I didn't know what mental health was. Okay, I was this 23, 24-year-old girl, and I've never heard this term depression or anything. So my dad just told me, tell everybody she died by heart attack. And for, I think, about a year, I kept saying she died by heart attack. And then something hit me and saying, no, why should I say heart attack? Because she died in pain. She couldn't live anymore. She was done. How am I honoring her by lying about her death? Right? And then I stopped saying, and I told sorry to all the people who I said she died by heart attack. She didn't die by heart attack. So basically 2013, I got married. Then I made my husband move to Chennai. Okay, I don't know why. I just made a move to Chennai, and I got a house nearby my mom's place. So I was also working because the thing was, Rohit is a doctor, my husband. He could get a job anywhere. But for me, it was Tamil industry and I could only get job there. So I asked him, can you move? And then we'll figure out later and all of that. And he did. So the routine used to be, he would get up, he would go to my mom's house for breakfast, eat breakfast, then go for work. Because I was a terrible cook. So he was, I don't even want to risk your food. So 2014, 1 year later, Rohit and I went for our first anniversary. We went to a place and then we came back and all of that. And the 23rd of December, usually my mom and me, our ritual used to be 24th of December. We sit and we had this amazing Christian auntie who used to send us like homemade wine and, cutlets and cake and everything. So we would just sit and watch a movie and eat. That used to be a tradition. But that day, since my dad wasn't in town, Amma was like, why don't you guys just come today, 23rd itself? Because, your father also is not there. Aram say we can watch movie and all that. And think, okay. So Rohit also came. I was there. My mom was there. We were watching a Shah Rukh Khan movie because my mom was a crazy fan of Shah Rukh Khan. So then we were eating and all of that. And after we finished eating, I said, Amma, should I stay back here? Because, dad is not here. She said, no, please. And we had two dogs. So mom was like, no, no, please. Ekru, you will sleep with me on the bed and I can actually sleep peacefully without your father around. I didn't feel suspicious at that time. I was like, okay, fine. And then we got down and we went to a house which is just next door. And then morning Rohit came to my mom's house and she she opened the door only after a couple of rings. So then Rohit just called me and saying, I think Amma's not well. Please check on her because she looked very like groggy and maybe she's having something. I said, okay, okay. So he said, I'll have breakfast in my workplace. Okay. Then he left. I came around 10 o'clock. I knocked the door and my house help was there. So she opened the door and I went in and all. My mom was lying down and she was very groggy and very like weird. So I was like, Mom, what happened? She's like, no, I'm not feeling well. I think I have severe migraine. I don't know what. I must be coming down with something. I said, please, Ma, I'll make you a lemon juice. You drink the juice. So then what happened? I just made her a lemon juice and said, Amma, just get up. We'll go to the gym and we'll just feel better. You just need some movement and all that. And she was like, and all that. And I was like, Amma, please. I got irritated with Amma, please. I'm going to go change and come. So then I left. After I left home, my house help also, I left home around say 10:30. I left home, I went to my place, and around 10:45, my maid, my house help also had come. I said, no, no, today no need, the house is clean only, you come later. She went, I locked up the house. So around say 10:45, just before 11, I went back home. And I started ringing the bell, no response. Knocking the door, no response. Then I called her phone. I can hear it ringing, but no response. And the weirdest part was we had two dogs, right? So whenever I would come to the door, they will bark because they know me, right? They'll start barking. They also are not barking. So my mom had this tendencies when she's very stressed, no, she gets fits and she falls in the bathroom. So she had seizure problem also. So I thought, okay, she's fainted in the bathroom. Immediately I called Rohit and said, listen, you need to come back. Amma's fainted in the bathroom. I'll try to break open the door. You just come. He said, okay, okay, I'll come. So then I went down. I asked people for help. Nobody came for help. I asked the watchman. He came up and he just barely pushed the door. And I said, okay, I'll get somebody else. And he went. It's been like 5 minutes. Nobody's like responded. So I started like really banging the door, banging the door. I think maybe the 100th time the latch broke and the door opened. The minute the door opened, the I don't know whether it's vibe or whether the breeze that I got that time, I knew something was wrong. I slowly walked to my mom's room and I saw her hanging and I just saw her tongue, which was blue. I saw her fingers, which was blue, and I ran from there. I ran, I fell down the stairs, I ran again, full tears. I'm asking people for help. Please help me, please help me. This has happened. Please help me. Nobody came. Again, I ran up, but I didn't go to the room again. It's like I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. Again, I went down. So since we were in Besanagar, and it was 24th, the New Year, I mean the Christmas before, right? So there was police patrol going on rounds. So I stopped the car and said, can you please help me? This has happened. I don't know what to do. And they came and I sat on the living room and they went inside. No, they're doing full investigation. So I said, please just get her down. You can ask me any question you want, just get her down. But they kept asking me questions. But how did this thing break? But how did you know like this happened? What do you think somebody else came through and did this? Do you think it's a murder? And they're asking me this such idiotic questions you can ask for a person who just lost their mother. And then they're like, I was like, please do it. I'll answer anything. I'll come to the station also. Just get her down. And then they said, no, no, the female police has to come. Then the female police inspector came, and then I just fell on her feet. I said, you're a woman. Please understand. I will tell you anything you want. Just get her down. And then they went, took some pictures, and then got her down. And I've not seen my mother after that hanging thing. I have not seen her at all. Then by the time my husband came, he started crying. He went to the room. Apparently, he did CPR. Then he came and sat, and he couldn't understand anything. And he just moved to Chennai, so he didn't know Tamil also that well. He started crying. The only thing I could do is I just looked at him and I caught his shoulder. I said, "Now we can't cry. We have to do what has to be done because it won't get done otherwise." So then I told Rohit, see, since you're a doctor, can you take Amma to the hospital, Roypeta Hospital, and figure out things there? And let me try to figure out things here. So then just when the conversation happened, my father came. He went to the room, he saw her, he came, he sat in the dining table like one dead body. He was like one dead body. He just sat like that. And then I told Rohit to take. And when they were going to take Amma, I went to the room, I shut myself. And then they took her. And then I came out and then I said, okay, now what do you want me to do? He said, okay, you need to come to the police station. I said, can I just call my relatives? So then I called my grandmom, my uncle, like the whole people that I knew. I called everybody. I told what happened. This is what has happened. And they were just asking me questions. It was so annoying. Instead of just telling me, okay, I'll be there. What do you need to do? She just kept asking me questions. I said, and then I cut. I just told the information I cut. And then I realized I don't have money because it was the end of the month. I couldn't ask my dad. And Rohit, he's there and he's trying to manage. So I called my shooting people. I realized at 26th I'd shoot. So I called my shooting people and say, I don't think I'll be able to come for 26th shoot because my mom just passed away. Also, can you give me a little advance of money? He said, of course, of course, of course. And then I had to find a crematorium, get a crematorium set, and then my relatives started coming. The relatives started coming, they cried and everything. From tea to to food to everything, I had to arrange. This 24-year-old girl who's just lost her entire world. Like I didn't have friends, I didn't have anybody. It was just me and my mom because my dad was an abusive father. So nobody really understood or took over anything. And then we went to the crematorium, and me and my father just turned and stood. So then my uncle is coming and crying and making scene and all of that. And then in the crematorium is when the shooting people came with cash. And I said, thank you so much, thank you so much. And then I went and paid whoever I had to pay. After crematorium, they bring the ashes, right? So I said we will do this in Besanagar beach because my mom loved that beach. So I put everybody in the car and all, and everybody went and they left me. Then I realized, like, okay, I am left back. So what do I do? Then one cousin had a bike. I was like, can I come and bike? And I hate bikes. He said, okay, okay. And I went to the bike. We went to the beach, and everybody's behind my uncle, who was the worst uncle anybody could ask for. Everybody's behind my uncle crying and all. Me and my father and Rohit just went back. We sat and we were just looking at what was happening. And then after the thing, they came home again, order food for them, feed them. All this I did. And then they were like, okay, Mola, we'll leave. Everybody left in the evening. Everybody left immediately after eating and everything. Everybody left. It was just me, my dad, and Rohit. And then the aftermath of that, right? My dad was every 2 minutes he went to the bathroom and came and sat like a thing. I didn't know how to deal with it. Rohit didn't know how to deal with it. And then my uncle calls me and says, we're going to do a CBI inquiry. Something is wrong. I'm like, do you think me and my dad killed my mom? I don't understand. No, no, I'm going. I said, you do what you want to. So this was what happened to a girl who didn't even know how to go to a bank and sign a check, whether it's shopping, whether it is going out and eating, whether it is gym. I did everything with my mom. This person who was my whole world is no more. And the way she decided to go, what? I didn't even understand what happened. And yeah, that was the darkest day. And it's so funny that I remember that day so clearly. It's like each and every second I know what had happened. But after that, couple of days were a blur. After like 26 onwards, it was just blur. I didn't know what happened. Yeah, so that's the day I lost hope on the police system. I lost hope on humanity. Yeah, it was quite bad.
Okay, thank you for your openness, and I'm sorry. We are sorry about this loss.
Yeah,
Your
thank you.
words, your words, echoes what so many people carry. So at what time did the therapy enter the picture for you?
So I was suffering a lot. See, my husband is a doctor, okay? Doctors really don't know about therapy. And it's a fact. And a lot of doctors don't know about therapy, or they think therapy is just, one of those fads, right? So after my mom passed away, the second year, my dad decided to get married the second time. Again, I had depression. Then the third time, my back had gone. I needed a full-fledged back surgery where they put cage and screws and everything in my back. And then that year went for me, 2000. So every year there was something bad that was happening, and every year I tried to kill myself. Every year also, and it was not working out also. And then I decided I want a baby. Maybe a baby will make me stay, and it is going to be a girl baby. Before I even decided to get pregnant, I knew it was going to be a girl baby, and that's going to happen. So I got pregnant. I got pregnant, and I was actually very happy during my pregnancy. But something kept telling me, you now that you have this baby, you decide to get this baby, you need to know how to survive. So without anybody's help, I went to Practo. I found a doctor, and I just went. And I said, listen, I found you on Practo. This is my life story. And then she helped me a lot. For about 5 years, she was my therapist. She got me a really good psychiatrist also. And then she had moved to Australia. And then she couldn't get in touch with me after that. Then I got now I have another therapist. But again, I'm very proud that I decided to find a therapist and I went forward to, I think it's because of my daughter.
Okay, so what changed when you sought help after the therapy?
That yes, I have gone through so much, even though people don't acknowledge that I have gone through so much. Yes, I have gone through so much. And like I said, you can never move on from a problem. You move forward and you move through it, through the pain. So she would teach me certain coping mechanisms, certain techniques that will help me with my pain. Yeah, like I cut down so many people who were toxic in my life. All that happened only after therapy. I felt safer. I felt more seen. I felt more heard because people around me were, okay, 2 months, 3 months, she cried, it's over. Losing a parent in a way I lost is the most painful. It's also like losing a child, right? And since my mom was my world and she died by suicide, is the most painful thing. Like not knowing why and why she did this was the most painful thing. So while the world was not acknowledging the pain, she was. My therapist was. And she's helping me through it. So I felt I was not alone. And there's somebody there to help me out with it. So that was the most important thing for me.
Lovely. So for anyone listening who's scared to start therapy, because like you said, even doctors think it's fad, right? What would you tell them?
I would tell you that if you're going through something, instead of talking to your friends or family, because they may not understand what you're going through because they have not gone through it. Especially an elder generation, they will say, hey, this and all we have gone through. I used to walk 100 miles to go to school. I used to walk 100 kilometers to go to school. They used to go. We have the facility of car or bus or everything. So our whole world is different. They lived in a different era. We live in a different era. And people don't know that even in that era, people used to die by suicide. But the knowledge was not there because there's no social media or news channels. Now people have more awareness about it. Like I never had awareness at 24. Now I know what mental health is, and it's so important. And talking to a therapist is the best way because you don't get judged. You are there to work on yourself, and you actually feel better, and you get so many coping mechanisms that will help you your future.
Beautifully said. Many people think healing is the end goal, but often it's a day-to-day process that teaches us strength. So your advocacy work has been remarkable. So especially your push for mental health helpline, the mentions in OTT platform and this Daughter's Promise initiative. How did that come about?
So I was like, okay, I'm talking to people online. Okay, but I want to do something, right? It's not just sitting at home and I know I'm only one person, but what can I do? So I wrote a letter to change.org and I said, please, can you help me file a petition for, to write? Because I saw a movie at that time that had this proper thing of dying by suicide. And I'm like, dude, there's not even a trigger warning. You put trigger warning for smoking and drinking, but you didn't put a trigger warning for this traumatic incident. And then I just messaged them and then they said, okay, let me help you out. And then we wrote a letter to the broadcasting minister in Delhi and he invited us over. I went there and I said, sir, this is the situation. We need to put, helplines for people to call if they're going through something. So he said, OTT platforms run on their own mind. They may or may not put your thing, but I will give them letters. So while that happened, Sony Live took it up. Then
Hmm.
Sony Live Shark Tank started putting the disclaimer, which
Hmm.
was a small win, not a big win, but something happened.
Hmm.
So that happened. Then I put a petition in the Tamil Nadu court for because people don't know that there's not a proper suicide helpline in Tamil Nadu. We do have few, but one is taken care by volunteers who have no knowledge about mental health. One is run by volunteers, which has a timeline between 9 to 4, and one
Hmm.
is run by some people where they half the time they don't pick up, and when they do pick up, they do not know how to speak to you. So what are we like doing? And the national helpline, they have all languages except for Tamil, which was like mind thing for me. I'm like, what?
Hmm.
And then I've put a petition, but my petition is not really working right now. So probably because of the election stuff happening, my petition has been put underneath. So now I'm waiting for the elections to get over to restart my petition, because I'm not going to give up until this comes out and people really do something about it. Because as long as I'm alive, as long as I have legs and hands and I can walk, I'm going to do something about this petition, because it's extremely important. Because if I can't speak to somebody close to me that I want to die, because most of people say, hey, Narat, what are you talking? Want to die, you seems. You have a house, you have this, you have that. What are you talking? You're so privileged. It has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with that. So they might feel more comfortable just dialing somebody and just talking to somebody randomly and saying, I'm not okay, can you help me? So yeah, that's another thing is happening.
Lovely initiative, Kalyani, and all the very best for it. So I want to ask you this. So do you remember the first time someone reached out saying helpline mentioned help them?
Actually, more than helpline mention, like I have got some text saying that, oh my God, I'm going through the same thing. Thank you so much for saying this. Now I don't feel alone anymore. And I was like, yes, that's what I wanted. That made my day. And then I slowly shifted my purpose towards that. And for me, I think the most humbling experience was I was in the airport, and I usually go to the bookstore when I'm in the airport. So I went to the bookstore and I was looking at books, and a lady just ran to me and she just tapped my back. So I was like, yes, ma'am. She said, I know this might seem random. I'm a psychologist, I'm a counselor. I said, wow, that's amazing, ma'am. After your video thing, I've got 40 patients more. And I was like, what are you saying? She's like, yeah. And I really want to thank you for, people knowing that there is help, there is therapy. Like if your leg is broken, you have orthopedic surgeons, and your hand is doing this. But if your mind is broken, where do you go? So you have brought patients to me. I'm not happy about you bringing patients to me, but I'm happy about you bringing awareness on this. And I was like, that day I can never forget in my life. That day really humbled me, because I was sitting and crying in the airport. I was like, really this happened?
That must be a feeling really fulfilling, right? Like transforming your personal pain into a collective change. Incredible work, Kalyani.
Thank you.
Let's talk about Daughter's Promise. What is it
Yeah.
and what does it stand for?
A Daughter's Promise is my book. So I started off this book not to be published. I started off for my daughter. So whenever she wants to know my history or whatever, and her, like a legacy, right? I wanted to do something. So I started off by writing a letter to my daughter. And then I wrote a letter to my daughter. And I was like, wait, I can maybe write some more. And then I started writing chapters and all of that. And then I'm like, then I spoke to my husband, like, maybe we can make this a book. And then he's like, yeah, I think it's nice. It's really good. And I just wrote the whole book. It took me 2 years to finish the book. I end the book with a letter to my mother. And then I just published it. And then it went on Amazon and all that. And I've sold pretty decent books. But since I'm not a very commercial person, a lot of people don't know. But I'm just happy it's there. Even if one person reads and says, hey, I relate to this, I'm really content. I'm very, very content about that. Because I started off as a book for just my daughter. And if 50, 20, right now, I think 300, 400 books I've sold, which I never imagined. That itself is giving me so much of happiness and purpose to move forward.
Great. So if you could go back to and speak to your younger self, like you rightly said, you have written a letter to your daughter. So if you could go back and speak to your younger self, the child actor or the grieving person or the women in recovery, what would you tell her?
I don't know, like, because I think more than telling my younger self that I wish I was more aware of mental health when I was younger. So, yeah, the knowledge of all of this given to me in a younger days, I think would have been helpful. And I feel people should not really look for validation from other people and stop listening to other people's advice saying that, hey, this is just a phase, it'll go, you're fine, or whatever. You need help. If you have to go forward, you need to go forward, because there's only one you, right? There's only one you in this whole entire universe, and you can leave a legacy. You can tell your story. I'm just one person who's told my story. The more people tell the story, the more knowledge people get, and the more we can all stand united about something like this. So you need to get help, and therapy is the start of it.
That's beautiful. So before we close, and yeah, we are almost the last question. So I would like to ask, what's next for you and after the Doctor's Promise?
Right now, I've joined a NGO called Mindy. It's actually based out of Coimbatore, but I'm working in Bangalore. So here, what we do is we go to schools and colleges, talk about mental health, suicide prevention, and right now I'm also POXO and POSH trained. So we also go to schools and we train them for POSH training and POXO, and which has been really again humbling, learning these stories and all of that. So for now, I am with this company, I am with this NGO, but I'm a little different person. I also like to do things on my own. So I'm also going to be pushing for the PIL, like however long, even if I become 80 years old, I'll go like that to the court also. I don't mind. I will still do it. So yeah, in the side PIL, in the side whatever I can do to, for the awareness that's going on. And yeah, and the NGO that I'm working for.
All the very best, Kalyani.
Thank you so much.
All right, we have almost come to the end of the show. Like before we wrap, I know we had some deep conversations, so let's switch gears on a lighter note. So with the quick rapid fire, you ready?
Yes.
Just instinctive, no overthinking. It's like probably 5 seconds I'll give you.
Okay, done.
Right. What grounds you on hard days?
5 seconds won't help you. What grounds me? My daughter. My daughter.
Good. A habit that truly changed you?
If I can say, it's okay to be misunderstood. But I realized when it's okay to be misunderstood instead of answering back.
Lovely. Finally, someone said this. Okay. Are you a morning person or night owl?
So I used to be a morning person before. Now I'm an afternoon person, not even night. I'm like by 10:30 also I'm done.
Okay. One word your close friends would use for you?
I think right now they say I'm very brave.
Very true. Okay, comfort food you never get tired of?
Any Mallu food, I can never get tired of. That way I'm a proper Mallu. And end it with Thai sadam.
Okay, perfect. A small thing that instantly improves your mind?
Just being around my husband, my daughter, and just talking it out, or playing Uno. Playing Uno really changed my mind.
Okay. A moment you felt proud about yourself recently?
When the counselor came to me and said, you know what, you have brought in people because of your story. It was a proud, humbling, it was a completely mixed emotion moment.
Congratulations. Something that always makes you laugh?
There's very few things that make me. So when you go through mental health issue, you become your own specimen and comedian. So you end up cracking jokes in the most uncomfortable situations. Like I recently went to, I'm sorry, I'm going to elaborate this. I recently went to a hospital to see a psychiatrist, and there was another lady sitting next to me, and she recognized me because Tamil. She said, let's take photo. I said, okay. Then she took the camera. I said, 2 mentals in one mental hospital taking picture. Wow. And then she went hysterically laughing. I said, only people who are going through mental health can make fun of themselves and then crack the wittiest joke ever.
Okay, last thing. One sentence you would like every listener to hear today.
You are not alone. You are not broken. And don't depend on friends to tell your story. Just find a therapist, because A, you're paying for them, and B, they are really there to listen to you.
Great. Okay. Yes, we are done with the show, Kalyani. Thank you so much, because this conversation kind of reminded me that courage often looks like vulnerability.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for sharing your truth and light with us. Because people, of course, do hesitate. Of course, we talk about mental health. We have more spotlights. We have more go-to place. We have therapists, everything. But people do hesitate state because of the validation or the judgments they get through. And I love the place where you said it's okay to be misunderstood.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So, any few closure to the audience?
I just want to say, Devaki, thank you so much. Keep doing this good work. Get amazing guests. People need to listen to different topics and to, grow their knowledge on different areas. Thank you so much. You're doing an amazing job. Your questions were so good and crisp, and I really feel seen when you were asking me. I love people when you're interviewing or you're talking. It's like, okay, two friends talking, but you're actually listening to me, which makes it icing on the cake. So thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to seeing who your next guest is going to be.
Okay, that's a surprise, and I'll reveal it to you probably in WhatsApp.
Okay.
Remember, healing isn't about being unbroken, it's about being real. So thank you so much, Kalyani. You actually made this day, and thank you for the reminder.
Thank you.
So this is Dev, and this is Empower Journal. Until next time, stay kind, stay aware, and keep rising. Nandri.